As we look at ways to encourage citizens to stick to lockdown regulations, does the government need to revise its strategy to encourage people to play ball? For this, I'm joined by former public protector, Professor Thuli Madonsela. Advocate, good evening and thank you for your time tonight. People calling on the lack of awareness with the lockdown regulations as a reason for this low degree of compliance. Does that resonate with you?
It certainly does. Where I am in the suburbs, it's better. There is a lot of compliance. But when I get reports from what's happening in town and what's happening in the townships, there is a lot of laissez-faire approach to COVID-19. And when it comes to conduct before funerals and in families, as I said in my article, people are behaving the way they used to behave before COVID-19.
Now, if you ask the Premier of Gauteng, he'll tell you once they visited some of the townships around March, April and June, that compliance and awareness was improving by the presence of law enforcement agencies. He doesn't seem to support pulling them out or taking the SANDF back to the barracks. He actually says the more visible they were, the more people were beginning to be aware and comply.
That's exactly the problem, say, that we're dealing with this thing the way we deal with traffic offenses, where people want to know whether there's traffic officers are around the corner and then they behave appropriately. We need a change of approach, an approach that focuses on behavior modification, where people are going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, where people will understand the link between the life they want to live, the happy life, healthy life that they want to live beyond COVID-19, and the conduct that they need to engage in right now.
Yeah. I mean, how do you slap people on the wrist who are having lockdown house parties and buying tons and tons of alcohol during this time? You suggest we should make these people ambassadors of COVID-19. They must go and teach people in communities.
Absolutely. I'm suggesting that there has to be consequence management, but not this approach. I think the command and control approach in a country like ours encourages two things. The first attitude is catch me if you can. The second one is if there are no cops, then I can do as I wish. You need an approach that says it's our fight against COVID-19, and let's do this together. Let's just do it together. And that's the approach that has been taken in those countries where COVID-19 has been fought meaningfully. I'm not saying there shouldn't be some kind of policing. I'm just saying that our strategy to date has depended a lot on command and control, hence the emphasis on the police and on the army. So take them to the barracks, have peer educators. You will still leave the number of policemen that were there previously, but get people to educate each other to know what's right to do, but more importantly, why should we do this? What's in it for us as ordinary people?
Now, that's very important because if you look at South Korea, for example, one of the countries that is being hailed as having contained the virus very early on and successfully so without even a lockdown, in their toolkit, they had data sharing as part of a policy decision where they would share information of infected people depending on where they are via cell phones. So those texts were part of what they used. But there was, by and large, a lot of voluntary compliance as far as that nation is concerned. Is there something in our toolbox that is not effective that we should get rid of and maybe introduce something new?
Absolutely. Just firstly, it was Albert Einstein who said it's madness to keep doing something the same way you've done it and hope to achieve different results. In the 3 months of handling COVID-19, we have depended on the apartheid approach to it. Let's get the police, let's scare them, let's threaten them, and they'll do the right thing. No, people, when you scare them, you threaten them, they they engage in an attitude that says, catch me if you can, number one. And secondly, if you're not here, then there's no problem. We need to change our approach and invest in behavior modification. That's the argument I'm making in the article. And behavior modification, therefore, does not rely on policing. It relies on leadership, which is influencing people to think differently and therefore to act differently.
So,
that we can.
A big question around the funerals. You're saying we need to adopt a different approach. I spoke to the minister moments ago saying they are still going to be quite tough on adhering to that 50 number. You're saying that is not in touch with Ubuntu, basically, or the spirit of Ubuntu and how those laws have been put together.
Well, the reality is those laws, they're not in the spirit of Ubuntu, and people are ignoring them. For the minister to say he's going to be tough, he needs to rethink the strategy. Firstly, the making of the rules is not him alone. The team has to rethink the rules and say what rules are necessary and which of those rules are necessary. The minister has to explain to the nation why government has to decide who of my relatives can bury me. There's absolutely no rationality in that or any reasonableness in that. And people are therefore ignoring it. I think people are trying to comply with the rule about 50 people. At least the funerals that I've heard about, people try to comply with that, but the rest of it, they don't. Where I'm concerned about, though, is not what happens at the funeral, it's what happens before the funeral. Before the funeral in these families, they have people sitting on the mattress and then people coming in and out. And because we're investing our money into policing, we're not investing in our money into social workers and peer educators. For me, for example, when there's a death in the family, we should immediately have a social worker who goes to that family and kindly educates people about the risks at hand and how things should be done, and hold the hand of that family throughout until the funeral. Make sure that people keep the right distances where possible, make sure that people wear the masks and they clean their hands. In other words, let's treat our people, as grown-ups. Encourage them to do the right thing rather than threaten them to do the right thing.